of the San Diego 350 Raise the Alarm team, and it's wonderful to be with you here today in sunny, I repeat, sunny Southern California on this Sunday afternoon. Thanks for giving up some of your time to be with us. It'll be very valuable for the Save Rooftop Solar, How You Can Help Climate Chat. So let's go to the next slide, please. All right, before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that today we were standing on the ancestral lands of the Kumeyaay people, the original native inhabitants of Southern San Diego County. The Kumeyaay have lived in this region for more than 10,000 years. Kumeyaay lands once extended from the Pacific Ocean, south to Ensenada, east to the sand dunes of the Colorado River, and north to Warner Springs Valley. Today we pay respects to the Kumeyaay elders, past and present. Please take a moment to consider the legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us here today. Next slide, please. And sorry, I butchered that one. Who is San Diego 350? San Diego 350 is a primarily volunteer-led nonprofit organization building a movement to prevent the worst impacts of climate change and climate injustice through education and outreach, public policy advocacy, youth empowerment, and mobilizing people to take action. Currently, we have over 15 volunteer teams. Tonight, we're going to talk about the importance of advocacy and how we can take action in the County of San Diego. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you to our partners, the Hammond Climate Solutions, San Diego Urban Sustainability Coalition, and of course, San Diego 350 for helping put this together. So great to have all this help and partnership. Next slide, please. And so tonight's agenda, we're going to start with some background information, and then we're going to be listening to the wonderful Karina Gonzalez of Hammond Climate Solutions, going to give us this background on net metering. We're going to be listening about equity, jobs, and solar from Eddie Price of Grid Alternatives. And we're going to have a question and answer session moderated by myself. And then we're going to talk about how you can get involved in this effort, should you be so inclined. And so for the question and answer, we're going to have you type in your questions. You can do that during the presentations for Karina and Eddie. If you could put it in the chat and indicate who you would like to answer the question, if you want a particular person to answer the question, that would be extremely helpful. And then I will be reading the questions out, going through them the best of my ability during the question and answer session. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so when you do announce yourself or talk, please rename yourself to include your pronouns. Sorry, please do that. Katie, this is in the renaming in your Zoom window. Is that correct? Yeah, this is for renaming in the Zoom window. Sorry. So please put your name to the renaming, include your pronouns. We will be recording this event. We're already recording, and the recording and slides will be available after the event is over. Please remain muted. And if you have questions, again, put them in the chat, and we will allow for questions afterwards, after our two speakers have gone. Next slide. All right, so before we begin, I just want to remind you some of the stakes that are involved and what's really a few things that I think we like to keep in mind when we're talking about rooftop solar. So I want to just remind people, besides the climate emergency, fossil fuels have created some of the biggest hellscapes on the planet. And I do not say that word lightly. Up in the top left, I got a picture of the Alberta Tar Sands. This is a scar on the earth so large you can see it from space. It is so toxic that they have to shoot off a robot bird cannon every 30 minutes, all day, every day, to keep birds from touching down and landing in the tar sands because they will instantly die. All right, and they're making this bigger every minute of every day. On the right, we've got coal top removal. This is complete mountaintop removal. How would you like to have this in your backyard? The bottom left, we've got a fracked gas, oil and gas field in the Permian Basin. I mean, just look at the scale of the habitat destruction we have. And that doesn't even include the climate gases that are being released. And over on the bottom right, we have something we never really hear much about, but we should hear about it every day. This is the Niger Delta. It's a complete catastrophe led by all this oil that's been spilling out over decades and decades there, burning the forests, polluting the land, causing cancers. The average life expectancy in the Niger Delta is 40 years of age. That's the kind of environmental injustice that fossil fuels get. And we're not even talking about the climate catastrophe. But let's talk about the climate catastrophe, because that's the next scale of the problem. Next slide, please. So the climate emergency is really urgent. And the summer of 2021 finally hit home to a lot of people, should have hit home to everybody, how incredibly awful it is already. And just let's just put this out. It is only going to get worse. All right. So this is just the beginning. So death, let's give you a few examples. 1,000 people basically dropped dead in the record heat that we had in the Pacific Northwest. BC hit 120 degrees Fahrenheit 3 days in a row. 2 months later, they had record flooding, right? 1 billion marine animals were thought to have cooked during that time to death in the ocean during that heat wave. And they're even in California, a mother, a father, a baby, and a dog who were very fit and healthy died just hiking because it was just too hot that day. And the destruction has been immense. California had the 8 largest fires that have occurred in 2017. Over 10% of the giant sequoias died in one fire. They were using aluminum foil to try to protect some of the biggest trees. This is really desperate stuff. California and the entire Southwest are still in a record drought. And my old town of Boulder nearly burned to the ground. 1,000 houses burned to the ground. All right, so this is just, oh, by the way, Big Sur is on fire in January, right? These are unheard of things. And then around the world, it's been everything but a rain of toads, right? I mean, you've got record-busting flooding across Europe. Egypt, heavy rains sent 500 people to the hospital with scorpion stings because the scorpions had to run out and save themselves. Hurricanes destroyed the Dominican Republic. I mean, every house practically was damaged. In China, there was flooding greater than the entire recorded history of their 5,000-year-old civilization. That's just incredible. And droughts in the Horn of Africa could starve millions of people, and they literally have caused swarms of locusts. I mean, these are biblical type apocalyptic scenes that are caused by climate change. So I just want to give you a little bit of background to give you the sense of why it's so stupid and insane that people would try to kill rooftop solar anywhere at any time. All right, so that's what we're looking at. Okay, so that's a little bit of the urgency. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so this is where I'm going to turn it over to Karina Gonzalez from Hammond Climate Solutions to give us a, okay. We're all going to wait for Eddie's going to come back, but we're going to talk to Karina, who I was happy to meet and hear from the first time at the peaker plant protest that we had to go after to protest the peaker plants that Semper Energy has put up down in El Cajon, in one of the most polluted districts in San Diego County. So she's a wonderful speaker. I'm going to let her introduce herself and give us some background on the problem. Please, Karina.
Thank you, Scott. Hi, everyone. My name is Karina Gonzalez. I am the Climate Justice Policy Advisor with Hammond Climate Solutions, and I have been closely tracking this net metering proceeding and building a local grassroots and statewide coalition to oppose the utilities and the CPUC's decision with this. So I always like to start off these conversations with a couple of quotes. So the first comes from a recent California Public Utilities Commission study, and it says utilities are inherently incentivized to make investments to drive an increase in their rate base and therefore their profitability. And the second quote comes from Dr. Shalonda Baker, who is the Deputy Director for Energy Justice at the U.S. Department of Energy. And she says, rooftop solar isn't the insult. The insult is placing fossil fuel generation in communities of color. The insult is the disproportionate burden that low to moderate income homes are paying for electricity. That's the issue the utility should be tackling rather than trying to end rooftop solar, which actually lowers emissions if you think of it over a longer time horizon in the very same communities they say they care about. So these quotes show utilities, they aren't concerned with communities of concern. If they were, then they wouldn't have the highest rates in the nation. If they were, they wouldn't place fracking in people's backyards. So I think that these quotes just really drive that point home. Next slide, please. So as we begin this discussion, I think it's important to kind of understand what net energy metering, or NEM as it's referred to, actually is, and why it's important for rooftop solar. So NEM is basically a billing arrangement that allows residential and commercial customers to generate their own electricity. The solar customers then share the extra energy that they produce with their neighbors. And for that extra energy, they receive bill credits. So this arrangement is what has made solar feasible and what has really made solar increasingly accessible to working class families across the state. So California's has 1.4 million solar roofs, and this policy is basically what has allowed it to become increasingly accessible. So the utilities now are trying to basically gut this critical policy by claiming that the program creates a cost shift between customers. So a cost shift between customers who have solar and customers who don't have solar. And they claim that NEM costs the utility customers billions of dollars, and that they that reforming net energy metering will somehow solve this equity issue that they've basically made up. So this isn't true. The current proposal that the CPUC released last month, it will kill the industry. Beyond the jobs aspect, it's going to increase our dependence on dirty energy. The less rooftop solar we have, the more we need more transmission lines, more infrastructure, and that's going to raise rates for everyone. So last year, Vibrant Clean Energy put out a study that showed that rooftop solar can save California ratepayers billions of dollars. And that's because we don't need as many transmission lines and distribution infrastructure. Those costs are shifted to ratepayers. So we all have to pay for the construction, the maintenance, the wildfire mitigation on them. And then when they cause fires, which we know that they caused in PG&E territory, we have to pay for that as well. So not only does rooftop solar save from those costs, it saves us from wildfire costs as well. Next slide. So this kind of breaks down the inaccuracy of the cost shift calculation. So one of the main issues with the cost shift argument is that utilities exclude many costs from their calculations. So I have some listed here, but for example, the utilities leave out the health benefits that we get from cleaner energy, the societal cost of carbon, out-of-state methane leakage, land use benefits gained by putting solar on our rooftops instead of out in the desert, and then the value of reliability and resiliency that rooftop solar provides to the grid. Most importantly, the calculation fails to fully incorporate climate change costs, costs that a joint working group in California agencies have put at approximately $1.1 trillion per decade for the state of California. The utilities use utility-funded studies that show a cost shift, but of course, when their numbers leave out all of these other important factors, then they're not true. And many parties in the proceeding have pointed that out. Next slide, please. So now I'll get into what the current proposal is from the California Public Utilities Commission. Like I mentioned, it was released last month. It largely aligns with what the utilities wanted, which we fully expected. So it has the highest in the country solar fees. For SDG&E, a residential customer with an average sized system would be paying roughly $64 per month. And that is just for having solar. So that does not include a solar loan or lease payment that most homeowners take advantage of if they don't have the upfront capital to just pay for a solar system. And then you'll see the other costs for the other utilities on the slide as well. The California Public Utilities Commission is also proposing to reduce the credit that solar customers receive for the excess electricity that they are sharing with their neighbors by 80%. So right now, solar customers are getting compensated roughly 24 cents per kilowatt hour, and the proposal proposes to cut that down to about 3 to 5 cents. So dramatic reduction, which would dramatically impact the economics of having solar. And then the proposal goes further than making changes for new customers, and says that everybody else that has solar, that even though they were promised a 20-year grandfathering, they're going to reduce that to 15 years. So people that have solar now that were, purchased solar based on the economics of their system, now that's all going to change because they're getting cut back 5 years and they're going to be forced onto this new proposal. Next slide, please. So the state has said that we need to triple the amount of both rooftop solar and utility scale solar in order to meet the state's 100% clean energy goals. Of course, this will not happen if we are making rooftop solar more expensive. And failure to get to 100% clean energy, as we know, is going to disproportionately impact communities of concern. It's going to expose more people to dangerous air pollution and put these frontline communities right in the most dangerous places where the effects of climate change are felt more. And so that is really what this proposal, what is damaging about this proposal is the climate change impacts that we're going to feel from the reduction in rooftop solar. Next slide, please. So just wanted to show everyone the local coalition that we have built in San Diego, which includes 6 cities throughout the county, 2 school boards, number of environmental and climate organizations, and unions. So we've built a lot of attention around this, and we're really proud that San Diego is stepping up and showing that we do not accept this. We want to see solar continue to grow. And just recently, the mayor of San Diego released a memo as well that said that we can't accept this. We need to see solar continue to grow sustainably in order to prevent the worst impacts of climate change. So that's it for me. So I will pass it back to Scott.
Fantastic, Karina. Thank you very much. And I encourage people to put their questions that you might have for Karina in the chat so that we can pose them to her later during the question and answer period. I have a few questions myself, but I would like to ask those last. So if you have some questions, please, about net metering or about Hammond Climate Solutions or about any of the issues, please put them in the chat. Next up, it's our pleasure to have Eddie Price from Grid Alternative. Eddie, are you here? I'm looking around on my Zoom screen.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yep.
Great.
Yeah,
Eddie, fantastic.
I'll
let you introduce yourself and give your presentation. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm not going to thank you guys for having me miss the last quarter of the football game, but that's okay. That's okay. I'll blame that on the NEM charge. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Since I haven't really done this, I'm going to go off camera. and begin to share my name is Eddie Price. I work for Grid Alternatives, national nonprofit solar company. I'm also the chair of the San Diego Community Power Community Advisory Committee. I do a lot of work in the community. I'm a partner on a 70,000 square foot energy equity campus located in Southeast San Diego. And I'm always in conversations like these. I always find it amazing that the California Public Utilities Commission, I've been looking at that name for the last couple of weeks. And, one would assume that the California Public Utilities Commission is designed for the public. But I believe, from its actions over the course of decades, that it's designed for the public utilities, SDG&E, Sempra, PG&E, and SoCal Edison. I think, that's where we get it wrong with it. We think they're on our side, but they're actually on the other side. And I might add that I didn't really get involved in this industry because of climate change, environmentalism, butterflies, or, hugging trees or anything like that. I got involved in it because of the economic benefits to communities of concern. With the understanding that now that the sun is generating all this energy and it shines on my roof just as well as it shines on everybody else's roof, I ought to have access to all the opportunities that it presents itself. However, it seems like, the utilities, the public utilities, and some of the labor unions don't want that to happen. And I don't understand that. As I watch this paradigm shift, and understanding that the state of California is mandating certain targets to hit that won't be hit without rooftop solar. And at the same time, they're considering devaluing even more rooftop solar. That just amazes me. The hypocrisy in that situation. We really need to, one thing we need to do, I believe, is increase the size of our choir. I'm looking at people on this call and, I've seen all these names before. And I think we need to start inviting more people that have a dog in this fight, right? Everybody that has a light switch, regardless of whether or not they have solar, has a dog in this fight, because the opportunities that solar and renewable energy presents go far beyond having rooftop solar. There's community benefit and city benefit, and, benefits to schools and communities. And, it generates enough capital to offset a lot of issues, whether they're in communities of concern or any community at all. I, as a matter of fact, I hope I'm on topic, because I was watching a football game and I forgot what the topic was.
Great.
I don't have any slides because it's, all you got to do is look outside and look at rooftops and understand what the dilemma is, right? Once again, we need to increase the size of the choir. I'm talking to more community-based organizations that have nothing to do with environmentalism or energy efficiency and all that kind of stuff, just to let them know that they need to be in this conversation also. Because if this conversation was going the other way and all the opportunities were like the Wild Wild West, all these churches, all these nonprofit organizations, all these business owners that have rooftops, they would be involved in this conversation. And that is the hope of our opponents, that we don't raise these issues with people that aren't in this conversation yet. They're fighting a losing battle, and they're just trying to draw out the amount of time that they lose so that they can gain more profits. As I see it, eliminating, devaluing rooftop solar, while at the same time selling my solar that my house generates to my neighbor, also amazes me. You tell me that, they tell me that my neighbor is subsidizing my rooftop solar. And I don't understand that, because my neighbor is actually using the energy that's being generated throughout the day from my rooftop solar and paying utility rates for an ion or eon or whatever that little thing is called that goes from my house to their house. They're paying utility rates when it should be wholesale rates, right? Because I generated it and I live right next door. The energy industry and energy period has changed. You know, and I think I may have misspoke a little while earlier when I said that the paradigm is shifting. The paradigm has already shifted. We're trying to catch up to the paradigm shift. It's shifted already. It's in place, you know, and that could be understood by looking at all the legislation that is moving towards that arena, whether it's EV charging stations, LEED certification for buildings, all of those things. The paradigm has already shifted and we just need to catch up with it. And the utilities do not want to catch up with it because they will lose all of their profits. I just saw a question, so I'll answer the question, but the question disappeared. But it has something to do with workforce development. Grid Alternatives, the organization that I work for, is a large proponent of workforce development, whether it's rooftop solar, battery installation, EV charging installation. And this is just for anybody in the community. You do not have to join a union to take advantage of this opportunity. And everybody that we hired, 95% of the people that we train get hired in this industry, right? And so, you know, there's always that battle with the IBEW and our organization and other organizations about who can work and take advantage of the opportunities that renewable energy creates. Once again, the paradigm has already shifted, and we need to catch up to it. There's a lot of, if rooftop solar was to be put on just every city-owned building, the union here couldn't handle that in a expeditious amount of time, right? And if you take into effect all the business owners and all the vacant land and all that kind of stuff, the workforce needs to greatly increase based upon renewable energy needs. The state of California mandated that all new cars sold in 2035 will be EVs, which means there's going to have to be a wealth of EV charging stations put in and maintained and all those kinds of things. And no one entity or no one organization can do it. And they should not hold the rest of the communities hostage, whether it's community of concern or any other community. I don't know. I think that might be all I got. Is that appropriate for this group of people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Eddie. We really appreciate
Thank you.
Your comments, and sorry to take you away from the game. It's for a good cause, though. It's a really good cause. We're going to have a question and answer period at the end of this. Shouldn't be too long from now, and we can. I hope you can stay around for some questions.
Okay, no problem.
Is that good? Okay,
yeah,
great.
And I'll blame it on the NEM proceeding instead of this group of fine people.
Yeah, thank you. We're trying not to cause problems, and we definitely didn't want to take you away from the game. That's for sure. All right, thank you so much, Karina. Thank you so much, Eddie, for giving us that background. I have lots of questions, and I see a bunch of really good questions in the chat, and I will get around to them in the Q&A session. So before that, I think we should go back to the slides. Before that, I wanted to give a little bit of background about some ulterior motives that might be for killing rooftop solar. And I don't know if people really understand sort of the scope of what the utilities, like why would they be so interested in killing something that they're actually making money off of? And so I wanted to make you aware of the biggest energy corporation in the San Diego area that you've never heard of, or maybe you've heard of it, but don't quite know the scope of its action. So this is our effort that San Diego 350 Raise the Alarm Group has to try to educate people about Sempra Energy Corporation, the parent company of San Diego Gas and Electric and SoCal Gas. So we have a semprafracsourfuture.org where you can learn more about these issues, but it's all based on their own internal documents and what we understand about fracked gas or natural gas, which is really fracked methane. Next slide, please. Okay, so I just want to keep in mind if I'm talking about this, is that 50% of the carbon polluting our atmosphere has been disgorged already in the last 30 years, so 50%. In 2021, we had a record number of greenhouse gas emissions. So it's like going up, right? We're supposed to be going down. And we know from the IPCC report that we're most immediately start reducing or eliminating greenhouse gas emissions, right? So when we're talking about subsidies for solar, well, think about the subsidies we're giving the fossil fuel industry by letting them pollute and letting our children pay the price of this down the road, right? So that's a real subsidy that people don't think about. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is Sempra's vision in all this? Well, Sempra's vision, and they're the ones who are funding the killing of rooftop solar, partly funding it, by the way, is to extract methane from the air and sell it around the world. So they want to expand natural gas, hint it's not natural, and build infrastructure to send it overseas. In fact, they have built this infrastructure. They want to establish a multi-decade dependence on fossil fuels, which they call natural gas. And they have used our money from our utilities, which they force us to pay through the franchise agreement, that funded this pipeline infrastructure, pipelines and terminals and export to transport the gas from the fracking fields. 80% of the gas that they're selling or more is actually fracked gas. So really, they're the frack gas guys. Next slide, please. Okay, why is frack gas bad? Well, water pollution, habitat loss, air pollution locally, especially around low-income communities where they do a lot of the fracking. There's a lot of man camps that get set up in these fracking fields. There's a lot of rape. They've been associated with rape and murder. And I know that from where I'm from, upstate New York, when these guys roll in, suddenly all the motels become brothels. There's also explosions and leaks that happen. And just as far as the greenhouse gas effects of methane, it's 80 times more potent a greenhouse gas than CO2 over 20 years. And the question is, do we have 20 years? So this is really, it's a myth that this is a clean transition fuel. In fact, it's way worse than coal in the short term. Next slide, please. It's also a really big scam. So a lot of the things they do, and this happens where I'm from as well, is that they say, hey, we're going to come in, you're going to make some money. It's really easy. You just let us drill in your land and you just take the money home. You don't have to do anything. Sign here, you'll get a bonus, right? So here's an example of how they do it in on Navajo lands, the Dina lands. They're taking advantage of 70% unemployment here, and they have 70% of the population living in poverty. So they come in and say, hey, you can make some free money. But what they don't tell you is they're going to leave all the waste behind. So in this one case, they let us spill a slurry of 59,000 gallons of toxic fracking water, which they pull back out of the ground, because this is an amazingly expensive, water-intensive process that it's worse than you can imagine. And then they leave it behind. And then in this one case, they let the waste just roll into the people's water and disappear onto their land. No, they don't have to clean any of it up. And all day and all night, they're running generators for 2 years so that people can't even sleep. Next slide. Frack gas is also really a kind of assaulting of the earth. So it turns out that Physicians for Social Responsibility has found out that in fact, the fracking fluid that they're injecting into the earth is actually full of PFSAs in many cases. So these are polyfluoroalkyl substances. They're also known as forever chemicals because there is nothing on earth that eats them. No microbes will eat this stuff, and you can't even burn them to get rid of them. They found out that oil and gas, this was used to lubricate fracking fluids to get oil and gas in over 1,200 wells in the United States. 130 oil and gas companies, including ExxonMobil, were doing it. In one fracking site in Glasgow, Texas, they estimated that drilling operators injected 324 pounds of PFAS into a single well. One measuring cup of this one substance could contaminate almost 8 billion gallons of water, and they're putting 324 pounds of it into a single well. So you can see what they're doing to the water sources. And they're also linked, these things are linked to immune dysfunction, reproductive harm, cancers at levels of parts per trillion. So this is where fracking is, it's just a nasty business. Next slide. Sempra is a natural gas holding company. In a way, they don't actually frack it, but they sell it. So they own SDG&E, SoCalGas, Encore, and Sempra Liquefied Natural Gas. In 2019, Sempra sold all its clean renewable energy products. Now they bought a few back since then because they were embarrassed. They've increased all their investments in natural gas. So you can see this with solar. Like, why am I talking about this? Well, solar conflicts with this business model. Their focus is liquefied natural gas terminals. So what they do is they liquefy the gas, and they want to ship it abroad into Europe and Asia. And the growth of frack gas is really dependent on this export system, which we paid for through our ratepayer dollars. All right, next slide. So LNG is the frontier of fossil fuel expansion, and they've gone all in. Liquefied natural gas is 600 times denser. And so methane is 600 times denser in liquid form. So if you freeze it down, you can ship a whole lot of methane gas around the world very easily. And then when you go to the other side, you just speed it up and expand it again. So the overproduction of natural gas, this is the solution. So even if we reduce the frack gas here, they want to export it elsewhere. And in fact, they are doing that. US is now the largest exporter of fracked methane gas in the world. Next slide. Liquefied natural gas this is how the system works. So they bring in the natural gas to the pipeline, they liquefy it, which makes they cool it down to compress it. They put it on a tanker, they ship it across the world. It gets to the other side, they come into a terminal. It's then heated up to expand it, and they put it back through the natural gas lines. So this is how the system that they're building to ship it to Europe and Asia. Next slide. All through this, there's all sorts of gas release and all sorts of hazards. So in the fracking, methane gas and toxic fluids are released. So there's contamination. Methane is released in the scrubbing, so it leaks. Methane leaks in the pipelines, methane leaks in the terminals, and methane leaks on the tanker. And this is before you burn it. So then you take it out and you burn it, and that releases CO2. And so what they want to do is lock us in for another couple decades on this liquefied natural gas empire and natural gas. So they don't, that'll keep us from building renewable energy. Next slide, please. The San Juan Basin, it turns out this is part of the fracking, but this is some pictures from satellite images showing where all of the leaking from equipment failures, freezing, human error are coming from. Wells are leaking 2.5 times more than reported, at least. There's basically no regulation on these things. And there's similar problems in California and everywhere that fracking takes place. And of course, there's heavy water usage because they have to put millions of gallons of water into each wells to bring up the oil and gas. Next slide, please. Methane is actually exploding in the atmosphere, quote unquote. I mean, it's really going up. It's one of the sharpest increases in greenhouse gases is methane, which is a very dangerous position to be in because, as I said, it's 80 times more potent, a greenhouse gas over the short term than CO2. Next slide. And you can see, you really should check out this Permian climate bomb. It's a well-researched site that shows what is going to happen and the scale of release that they're talking about over the next round. This is like Sempra is not fracking it, but they're selling this stuff. So what they estimate, and this is astonishing, is that the amount of leakage that's happening in the Permian Basin by 2030 will be the equivalent of taking 50 train cars of coal every day out into the desert, putting it into a giant pile and burning it every single day. It's the equivalent greenhouse gas releases of doing that every single day. It's absolute madness. That's in addition to all the other releases that we're having across the world. Here's a couple of pictures of some of the releases. If you take an infrared camera and look at the gases out there, there's about 5% of wells are basically unlit and just venting gas day and night in the Permian Basin. Here's a couple of wells where they just took pictures. You should really check this out, of constant invisible leaking of methane. You can only see this with certain types of cameras, but it's just all the time. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do we know all this? Because Sempra told us. Where did Sempra tell us this? Next slide. In their perspective to their shareholders, they're really proud of this. So what they've done here, this is a picture of their terminals that they're building. They've got one in Texas over here, Port Arthur, and they've got a couple that they're building in Baja. And what they have done is they invested $32 billion, a third of that from San Diego ratepayers, the largest 5-year capital investment in their history, focus on cleaner fuels, which is this liquefied natural gas and exporting gas, which are going to send obviously to Europe on the eastern side and to Asia on the western side. Next slide, please. And what they want to do, and this is astonishing, but they estimate there's something like 2.4 quadrillion cubic feet of natural gas that they want to, or fracked methane that they want to take out of the Permian Basin. We cannot do this and keep our planet at any type of cool temperature, that's for sure. Next slide. And I just find it astonishing in the midst of all this. I don't know if you've got your recent bill from San Diego Gas and Electric, but what has gone after they're capturing all this methane, they're sending it all over the world. What is going up the most? There's something like they want to do a 30% increase in your gas bill, even though there's plenty of gas. And they own SoCalGas, which had the largest methane leak in California history. They should be paying us for leaking all that gas into the atmosphere, right? But they want to raise the rates of the gas well over electricity, and they want to lock us in to buying this gas. So they're fighting building electrification, they're fighting rooftop solar, and yet they're sending this gas all around the world so other people can have that cheap gas. Oh, and this is even better. They're going to look at the bottom of this email I got. They're blaming, here we go, climate resiliency investments and low-income energy efficiency programs for the rate increase. So they want more of our money, but they already stole it so they could build this liquefied natural gas, and now they want to kill rooftop solar. I mean, I don't know what to say. Next slide. All right, so this is the last part of our talk. We are going to, are we going to do the question and answer first?
Yeah, question
Okay.
and answer.
So we're going to do the question and answer first because we're going to get back to our amazing speakers. Thank you for listening to the all other side of the equation. And I have a bunch of great questions here, and I'll try to alternate them as best I can between Karina and Eddie. Hope you guys are still with us here. Okay, so let's start off. I think this could be a question for Karina. Phil is asking, what does the prospect of defeating this proposal look like right now at this junction?
Yeah, so it's a little hard to say. The proposal was scheduled to be voted on January 27th. It has since been taken off the agenda, and it is likely to be voted on in February. So I think that means that the commission realized that there was work to be done. There also has been a lot of turnover within the California Public Utilities Commission. So one commissioner, which was the commissioner that drafted this proposed decision, has since left and been replaced with somebody else. And then the president also left last year, and Governor Newsom appointed 2 new commissioners. Last week was the new president's first meeting, and she spoke about climate. So we're hopeful that there will be some changes. A couple weeks ago, the governor finally weighed in and said that there needs to be changes in the proposal. He didn't specify what changes, but we're hoping that the commission realizes how bad this decision was and goes back to the drawing board to make some substantial edits. I think for now, what we can do is make our voices loud. It's not the time to back down now. This has been a year-long fight, but I think now more than ever, it's important that our voices are heard. So the solar industry participated in 2 large rallies last week in San Francisco and LA with over 3,000 people marching, and I think that showed them something. All of these jobs would be lost if this proposal goes through, and more climate organizations are speaking out. So I'd say that we are hopeful, but we never know what's going to happen.
Thanks, Karina. It seems to me like the they can feel the pressure when the governor comes out and makes a formal statement. It seems like he's feeling it, he's hearing from it, and we've just gotten started. So as you say, it's not the time to take the foot off the gas. It's the time to put the pedal to the metal and all this. So that's really, really good to hear. I'm going to go, oh, sorry, go ahead. Okay, so I'm going to go to a question for Eddie. Rita asks, Eddie, what impacts does this have for renewable energy jobs? What education and training for solar renewable jobs is available in San Diego County? So this is a two-part question. First of all, what is it? What is the impact of this on jobs? And the second question, right now, what are the trainings for solar renewable energy jobs in San Diego County?
Well, basically, to answer the first question, it will decimate the job prospects in this industry in San Diego County. If you devalue solar or renewable energy, that means there's no renewable energy, there's no battery storage, there's no nothing. The second part of the question is, to my point earlier, grid alternatives is we have workforce installing solar, installing batteries, installing EV charging stations. With the San Diego Community Power, which is a CCA in San Diego that just signed on National City and the county, there's going to be a lot of locally generated renewable energy projects that are available for people who don't need a degreed education. They don't even need a high school diploma, actually. They can grow as this industry grows, and there's some colleges, community colleges that offer courses in solar, offer courses in engineering, design, because it's not just, putting solar on the roof. Those things have to be designed. The project has to be designed. Whoever put it on my roof had to go to an engineer first to make sure that it was good to go. Electricians are involved, all those kinds of things. So, decimating this industry creates a lot of job loss and job opportunity in this area, specifically in California in general.
Thank you, Eddie. That sounds really powerful. It sounds like, from your description, personally some people who've gone through the system and may have either done the community college route or just gone straight from high school. Is that correct?
Yeah, I know hundreds of them. They're some of them just got out of the penitentiary, or just got out of jail, or have mental illness, but they seem to latch on to the simplicity of installing a solar installation on somebody's roof. It's not that necessarily that complicated. You hook up A to B and then hook up B to C, and you're kind of good to go. And so it has a lot of opportunity, especially in communities of concern, to help with the economics of these communities, right? And it's all based upon whether or not the sun comes up, right? And so they're trying to hijack and hold the sun and its energy hostage. And I don't know, that's some egotistical stuff. I don't know why you would do that. To the last conversation about Sempra and fracking and all that kind of stuff, that creates no jobs in California, right? Even the jobs where they frack in California, they're bringing in frackers from outside of California to do the work, right? So it just blows my mind how this is even a topic. But I guess greed overcomes intelligence sometimes.
Absolutely. I just remember there's people that were fracking in New York, upstate where I live. They're from Texas,
right.
Texas.
Right.
They didn't care about our local place. They didn't care about the people. They didn't care about any of that stuff. It was crazy.
Right.
Thanks, Eddie. That's really encouraging. Sounds like really rewarding type of jobs too. I'm going to go to kind of the two questions are somewhat related. This will be, I think, for Karina, but Eddie, you can jump in as well. Greg Robinson says, I agree we can't trust the utility claims, but there are some legitimate third-party academic studies that raise concerns about the cost shift and the need to subsidize low-income communities. Aren't there some alternative proposals by some non-utility institutions that take this into account? From UC Berkeley and from the Haas study, for instance. And a related question is, one of the arguments I've heard from proposed changes is unfairly subsidizes relatively wealthy people who are the ones installing solar. So how do we address that argument? So it's sort of, what did the academics say? Is there some truth to this? And also, is there some truth that they're subsidizing people?
Yeah, so I'll start off with the cost shift. So I think that we reject that argument totally. Like I mentioned, the utilities have done a really good job of framing this as an equity issue and as an energy affordability issue, which we've seen have paralyzed groups in speaking out because they don't want to speak out against something that's hurting their communities. However, I mean, if you're going to charge ratepayers the highest rates in the nation, that's not caring about equity. Not once have they said, let's raise these rates for solar customers and then we're going to lower them for people in communities of concern. No, they've even gone further with saying that the people that own solar in communities of concern, they get a reduction in their economics as well. So it's not, it's their talking point that they use that shows that they pretend to care about equity, but we see that they don't. In terms of the alternative proposals, there were a number of proposals from non-utilities. So we saw Sierra Club, we saw Vote Solar and Grid Alternatives, and they all had very good proposals, some ideas from their proposals were included in the proposed decision. NRDC's proposal was pretty identical to the utility proposal. And if you go back and look at NRDC's history, you will see ties dating back decades to the utilities and pushing for what they want. The utilities use them as then saying, look, environmentalists agree with what we're doing, so everybody's happy. When in reality, they're the only quote unquote environmental group that is on their side. In fact, when reporters have started doing stories on this proceeding and they go to SDG&E and say, hey, can we talk about this proposal? They send them to NRDC. The utilities use them as a surrogate to say, look at these environmentalists, they agree with what we're doing, but we've seen their ties to the utility and we see it in their proposal that it's basically a carbon copy of what the utilities are proposing. So I wrote a blog on NRDC's history and I would be happy to share it with everybody in the chat so that you can read that connection and how far back it goes. I think that when we're addressing the argument that says that NEM unfairly subsidizes people, we need to, there's a lot of layers there. There's a lot of, like I said, calculations that the utilities don't use to show that this is true, but Eddie touched on it when he was speaking. My solar is benefiting my neighbor. That energy is going straight to them. And then it doesn't need to come from whatever power plant SDG&E has in Mexico. However, the utility then charges my neighbor full transmission, full distribution costs, as if that energy came all the way from Mexico. They make millions of dollars doing this, but they don't like to talk about that. And so I think that I reject that argument completely. I don't believe in those numbers. I've looked at the calculations. They don't include anything that, there's better studies out there, I think, and we can definitely share some academic articles that show these numbers accurately.
Yeah, and in addition to that, SDG&E, and they have not challenged this conversation, makes $1 million a day profit. And since they haven't challenged it, leads me to believe that they actually make more than that a day profit, right? The greatest subsidy is actually going to SDG&E and Sempra. We're subsidizing their shareholders, we're subsidizing their operations for fracking and anything else they want to do. And like in communities of concern, and this is known for utilities across the country, They're going to communities of concern and you know, give churches and little struggling CBOs $5,000 or $10,000 to get them on their side, right? And it's that also irks me. I'm trying not to cuss, you know, I cuss a little bit, and I'm really trying not to cuss, but this is a very hot topic. So, you know, back to the point, the subsidy is actually going, the PUC is trying to subsidize these utilities with our money, right? And I live in San Diego, and I love living in San Diego, and I don't mind paying a little bit more to live in San Diego when I talk to some of my relatives around the country. But I don't like getting robbed, right? And having the state of California part of that robbery team that comes into my house every month with an energy bill and says you must pay this. And you know, when we look at the rates, that every time there's a rate increase, SDG&E's is the highest, right? And we're already paying more than any other state in the country. So I don't understand that. But to surmise it all, everybody that gets the electric bill is subsidizing the utility to which that bill is going to.
Thank you, Karina. Thank you, Eddie. This is really great information, and it's an incredible perspective to have. I was going to say, like, how much subsidies do we have for the fossil fuel industry over this time? We talk about subsidies for solar, and what you compare that to fossil fuel, and from giving them the land, letting them pollute wherever they want, cleaning up after, subsidizing health bills because all those sick kids have to go to the hospital. They don't pay for that. We pay for that. And that doesn't even include the ratepayer charges and all the other things that they're doing. And they're going to raise our rates anyway. If they really wanted to help people, they could do something else. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next question. This is from Cherry. So what do we do about the CPUC plan? What is our plan to move forward to an actual public utility or public power? Do we have any comments on that? I guess we can start with Karina or Eddie, whoever wants to jump in.
Can you repeat the question, please?
The question is, so what do we do about the CPUC plan? I guess that's one question, which is kind of what we're doing. And the other question is, do we have a plan to move forward into actual public power?
Well, if I may, the what we need to do, and this is what I'm doing and attempting to do, is making this a conversation for the average Joe citizen, right? Not us that are excited about this, but the average Joe citizen. To my point earlier, everybody that has a light switch and pays an energy bill is affected by this. And they need to say something. The reason the governor is or whoever is not voting on it is because of all the people. The power is in the people because of all the people that have raised the alarm, right? And so that, in my humble opinion, is basically our only hope, right? Because we can't rely on the morals of some of these people, but we have to rely on the power is in the people, and everybody that has a light switch is involved or should be involved in this conversation, or at least know about it so that they can judge one way or the other. I see a lot of, and not just on this call, but on a lot of calls, there's a lot of intellectual conversation and studies and this, that, and the other thing. And for me, I'm a very simple-minded man, and it's not that complicated, right? They're making a lot of money and they're getting it from us. It's that simple. They're making a lot of money and they're getting it from us, while at the same time, to your point, destroying the planet, destroying people. Those people that you mentioned that go to the hospital because of some of this stuff, that's not just like a emergency stay to clear out their lungs. Their brain cells are affected for the rest of their life, and it might become hereditary, where their children's brain cells will be affected in some way, shape, or form for the rest of their life. If the utilities really want to do something, in these places where they're destroying the environment and making it unhealthy for people, they would put up hospitals. Just like Kaiser put up some stuff years ago because of what they were doing. They would put up hospitals to help some of these people that they're affecting. But, hey.
Yeah, I'm just going to follow up. Those are some excellent points. I mean, with that peaker plant protest that Karina and we all went to was out it was a San Diego Gas and Electric run peaker plant, which does high pollution during blackout periods, right? So it's already one of the most polluted neighborhoods, high asthma rates. Really, it's a community of concern already. And they put not one, but 2 peaker plants in this neighborhood, 2 of them. Right. And then they tell us how much they care about environmental justice. I mean, it's just not believable. It's absolutely not believable. At the same time, I'll just point out that they've created some of the best solar, in Australia. Sempra has an incredible solar community that one of the VPs of Sempra actually said, we don't have to do fossil fuels anymore. We can do it all on solar. And they have a demonstration plant in Australia that does it. Why don't they put that in alcohol? Why do they put the beaker plant? That tells you what their mindset is. Karina, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think Eddie did a good job of addressing that. I think, and I mentioned it earlier, I think right now we just need to, people power. We need to call the governor, make sure that our voices continue to be heard, call into the CPUC meetings, make sure that the commissioners are hearing our message. During the last CPUC meeting, we heard a lot of unions and utility workers stating their side, and the utilities. There were a couple of environmental groups that had called in, but I think this next one, let's show out in numbers. Let's show them that this isn't what the people want and the effects that it would have.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go. So we have some more time, right? I got some more questions here. Great. So Nancy asked, when I was waiting on the CPUC call, I heard repeated references to utility scale solar is 1/6 the cost of distributed solar. I have no idea how to respond to this claim, but would like your suggestions on to frame this response.
I can jump in there. So that stat does not take into account infrastructure or transmission costs, which would need to be built in order to bring that utility scale solar all the way to our communities. We pay for the construction of these transmission lines, and we pay for wildfire mitigation on them. The utilities want utility scale solar because they get a guaranteed 10% return on investment from every line that they build. And so they would love if we just killed rooftop solar. We have a bunch of desert scale solar. We have to build these humongous distribution and transmission infrastructure, and then charge ratepayers for all the lines that we need to bring the energy into our communities. That's what they want. That's why they're killing rooftop solar, and the unions that are employed by the utilities want that too. That's all their jobs. They don't care if they kill the rooftop solar jobs here. They want those jobs, those big jobs in the desert. I think the utility scale solar has a place in our clean energy transition. Like I mentioned, the state said that we need to triple both rooftop solar and utility scale solar. So I think they both have a place, but we can't choose one or the other. And utility scale solar is putting solar in deserts and damaging sensitive habitat, and that matters as well. So rooftop solar is more efficient. It brings the closer your load is to where the solar energy is, the more efficient it is. This energy has to travel all the way from the desert to get to our homes, and it's not as efficient. And so that's the stat that utility scale solar is cheaper does not take into account any of those costs to build it.
Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful. In fact, I think there was also, Jim also said that, yeah, I noticed that there's a guaranteed or handsome ROI 20% rollover. And guess where that comes from? That comes from us. So that's really a point. So I think we've had some really great questions. We did have a comment from Greg that I should cite the academic studies. Please look at them in the chat. They're quite long. Haas, Berkeley, Duke, MIT. I will note that SIO had some studies, and they have people from Scripps, but I also noticed that some of these people are funded directly from the fossil. They're actually taking Sempra's money. And I know that's happening at SDG&E. So whenever you read these academic studies, you really have to look at who is funding the academic research, because it's not always transparent, and it's not always, it's not always this nonprofit kind of nice thing from the government. So
can I say
Sure.
a comment quickly?
Absolutely.
So Haas is notorious for releasing these studies. Severin Borenstein is notoriously anti-distributed energy, and that they take money from, like Scott said, take money from fossil fuel companies. Not saying that they are exchanging the money in exchange for these studies, but Severin Borenstein is of the opinion that rooftop solar doesn't have a place in our transition. And I will say that on Wednesday, he and another economist are having a live debate, which should be interesting to hear about rooftop solar. So I will drop that link in the chat as well for those interested in attending.
Well, I have so many more questions for you, Karina, and for Eddie as well, but I do think we need to move on. I would say that just out of perspective, that there's a couple things about these utilities though. Like, I don't think it's mutually exclusive though, to have rooftop solar and to have utility scale solar. It seems like we're going to need all the juice we can get to power all of the EVs and all the other crap that we're going to try to run around, and all the computers and all that kind of stuff, right? So it's not, shouldn't be a fight. It should be both, not either or. And the other thing I just don't see is there's so much parking lot in this, the useless parking lot that's generating heat. I mean, I see some solar on some of these parking lots, but wouldn't it be great to just cover all this wasted space? I mean, people would love parking their cars under it, I can tell you that. And you could generate mass amounts, let's say, without putting something in the desert, and the transmission lines would be really short. So I sort of fail to see why we can't take advantage of that as well. So.
Well, see, Scott,
right.
that
Yes.
may be too simple. That might be too simple.
Yeah, might be too simple.
About that. Yeah. They, these people require complicated stuff, right? And complication is the tool of the devil. Everything is simple. The sun shines on that little thing over there and creates energy. It's as simple as that.
It's so simple, it's hard, huh?
Right.
I love it. I love it. That's great. Okay, so we're going to go to what you can do if we've convinced you, and if you're excited and engaged in all this. We'd like to talk about how you can get involved and help this process along. So a couple things you can do. First thing you can do is talk to the governor. So the governor, is not directly involved in the CPUC. I like to call it CPUC. No one wants to call it CPUC. It's a CPUC, but anyway, but the governor does appoint those people and has influence on what they say, and can talk to them, and has already said some things that he doesn't like about the plan. So the more we talk and the more we go after the governor, the better off, and the more we can have our voices heard, and we can get this overturned. So you can contact directly. There's Governor Newsom's address, by mail or email. You can also call the governor. We're going to talk about that in a second. And there's some stuff in the chat. Please take a moment and write some of that stuff down to take action. It's really easy, and they do listen. Enough of us call, they will listen. The governor will listen. Hey, it's his plan to make California carbon neutral or carbon negative or whatever. We can't do that without every bit of juice from the sun. Next slide, please. The other way to get involved, and I'll have Steve Hanson talk about this a little bit in a minute, but you can also come and canvass with us. So San Diego 350 has been doing a canvassing effort, talking to our neighbors with solar who would be interested in this. And we have a way of doing it. We've got these wonderful door hangers that we have. I've got 1,000 of them sitting in my room right now. I'm handing them out to people, or actually people are coming to pick them up and being real COVID safe, and they're bringing them around their neighborhoods. We have instructions to take satellite images, go to Google satellite images, look for the solar in your neighborhood, and go to your neighbors and either knock on their door or put a hanger out or both, and tell them about what the action is. So there's a link here you can use, but also I'll show you in the next slide, and we're going to put that in the chat. In the next slide, please. You can join us in going out the doors. So we've got some people here who've already distributed almost 1,000 of these flyers. People around the state have been interested in getting them. So they're solar customers. It's got a QR code to call the governor with the Solar Rights Alliance. We've just been hanging them on door frames. People have been knocking on doors and talking to people. And there's a lot of solar roofs out there, and people who should be and are very interested. We have great feedback from people. They're like, hey, I didn't know about this, or hey, I heard Arno talking about it. The old governor got on the New York Times. So people are really aware, but they don't quite know what to do to help out. So these door hangers effort has been really fun, and I think it's starting to be really effective. So maybe we can have Steve Hanson talk about what you're doing and how you want people to get involved. Steve, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yeah, so what we did was we created this door hanger that has the pertinent information on it of what's currently the proposal in front of the CPUC, and going around in neighborhoods and just to rooftop solar owners and asking them to call the governor. And my personal experience with this is that I end up talking to about half the people that I knock on doors. They'll answer the door, they're home. And so it's really an opportunity to sell them on the idea. And those that don't answer, we leave the hanger on the door. So just recently, what I've been doing, I live in the Point Loma area, so I've been using Google Maps to look at, where are the solar homes, and then I go and talk to them. And recently, this was through Hammond Solutions, they mentioned that the 4S Ranch, which is Delmar East, has some of the highest number of rooftop solar. In fact, it's around 10,000 homes there. And so I went on Google Maps and I looked and I realized that in some very small areas, there are 50, 125, 135 homes, all within a very short distance walking, that have rooftop solar. This seems to me to be a great opportunity for us to get a number of people to go out to 4S Ranch. That's the letter 4, S Ranch, and I created 9 maps, and there were over 435 solar panels in that small area. So what I'd like to do is propose, so individuals, please, we can get information to you about how to pick them up. If you want to just walk in your own neighborhood, that's fine, that's great. But I'd like to see if we could get a couple of volunteers to oversee going up to 4S Ranch with maybe 2 or 3 other people and walking these neighborhoods. It's almost door to door in some of it. I mean, neighbor after neighbor after neighbor. This would really give us an opportunity to contact a much higher rate of people. So the response from the people that I talked to, initially maybe a little wary, there's someone at their door. Almost immediately, they're saying, yes, they've heard about it, or they're saying, yes, they know something about it. And they're really interested in having more information. And I can't tell you how many have been thanking me for my effort to come out. So I'm just trying to paint a picture for that this is actually a very rewarding activity. And one can do, within a 2-hour period, can probably contact 40 or more homes. So it's really, it's an opportunity here to get involved with this campaign and getting people in the community to call the governor. So, Scott, anything more or anyone else that would like to share their experience about what's been going on here or anything that you want to say, Scott?
Yeah, I'm going to just say that everyone who's been doing it, which is part of the RTA team, has been really, really enjoyed it and gotten some exercise and talked to a lot of people. People are pretty engaged in this issue, and they really want to know about it because they own it, they're invested in it, they put their money to it, they want to help all these people are like really happy to help their neighbors, you know. And I'm just going to, there's other neighborhoods we've done, North Park, Kensington, South Bay, we've done some other places, but you know, getting it as far and wide, you know, you can do it in your own neighborhood, but Steve, if you want to contact Steve, Steve, you can drop your email in the chat.
Yep.
And just write. Steve's been pushing this forward, and get in contact with him if you want to join the effort. It'd be brilliant. And we also have, if people wanted to print out their own, we have the PDF. I've made it. It's pretty cheap to go to Vistaprint and get more of them out there. The other thing is, if we're going along and say that the CPUC doesn't listen to us, we're going to have to go back in this, and we're going to have to do a ballot initiative, or we're going to have to do something else to save solar if they decide to do something stupid, right? So having addresses of these people and having this already mapped out is going to be completely helpful if we have to go back and tell them, you know, no, this is not what we asked for. This is the state of California. So, but anyway, talk to Steve, and you can also contact me if you want to just pick up some hangouts. I still got a bunch of them. May have to print some more, Steve. It's going so well.
Let's do it.
Yeah, it's exciting. All right, other questions or comments? Katie, did I miss anything?
You got it. I do want to mention that if you like what you heard today, or you want to be involved in the long term, I would really encourage you all to get involved in San Diego 350. We have over a dozen volunteer teams, including the Raise the Alarm team, which is actively working on canvassing. So I would really encourage you to go check them out. You can take the first step by filling out the volunteer interest form, which the address is in the slide right here. So I would really encourage you to join 350.
Yeah, that's great. 350 has been an incredible amount of fun. They're wonderful people. Everyone's like just really engaged in it and open-minded and just, you know, wants to do the right thing. So I've enjoyed this group pretty much more than any other activist group I've joined. So yeah, you're welcome to get involved. You'll join a wonderful and thoughtful group of people. And it was incredible having you with us today. I love the questions. I love the energy. Thank you so much, Karina. Thank you so much, Eddie, for being here. Eddie, the sacrifice is, you know, the football game is noted, absolutely noted. And I hope your team won. That's all I got to say.
No, Brady done tied it up again with his miraculous self.
No.
Yeah.
Will he not go away? Will he
No,
not
he
go
won't.
away? Oh, all right. Well, anyway, it was a real pleasure. I'm going to try to put it on gallery so I can see a few people, but everyone's lovely faces out there. Get out in the sun. I know if you go in the sun while you're delivering the door hangers, it's that much more effective, isn't it? You know, you're like out here, solar power. Hey, look, it's right there. We're wasting it. I'm glad you, hope I didn't mess up too much of the emceeing here. But it was really fun to talk to everybody. I'd be happy to answer any questions or talk about Semper or talk about solar or whatever, anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this process. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it was great, Eddie. Really, really happy to have you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Karina,
you.
so much too.
Thank
And
you guys
everyone
for
for
having
joining.
me.